As per your request, I would like, then I will initiate with the practice of refuge, the practice of generating of bodhicitta, so that we set the foundation to receive the Kwanting, the initiation. Without taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, and without developing an enlightened attitude, then the rest of the path, the accumulation, the results of the practices that we aim for becomes baseless. Also, one can ask ourselves, whether we need refuge in the first place or not. I don't know how it is translated, the connotation of皈依but in Tibetan known as Gyamdro, and in English it's refuge. I also am not sure about its connotation and definition. Probably the term皈依has more weight because the language itself having been associated with Buddha Dharma for many generations. I would right now just simply describe what I understand about the term皈依or Gyamdro. In very simple words, it's a path where we basically seek for support, as simple as that. And it directly indicates that there is a need for support. It indicates, directly that there is a need, there is a necessity for support. If one is sufficient, and then of course there is no need for support. So we have to ask ourselves, are we self-sufficient? Of course, that kind of question should come professionally, not mixed with emotion. Yeah, meaning, I would say, one has to ask that question to oneself without emotion. Without emotion, meaning if it's with emotion, then there is also some sense of degrading oneself. Yeah, like feeling helpless and feeling courageless. So without any emotions, just simply asking oneself, do I need, in this case, support, or do I need refuge? And not just because someone said so, that you need refuge. So then a few questions that we have to ask is, are we free, are we liberated of kleshas? And are we free and liberated of karma? And then if it's very clear to oneself and that I am free of it, then there is no need. And that it is said that once an individual has reached the state of Buddhahood, then there is no more need of taking refuge. So then it's not, that kind of question should not only be asked right now, but also not just for now, but also every time, meaning on a daily basis, whenever we recite the refuge practice, we have to ask ourselves the same question. So if you have an understanding like that, then one can relate to the notion and the idea of Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. If you can approach in this way, then we can understand what Buddha, Dharma and Sangha means. If you begin with the first refuge, the Buddha, it's basically the state of completely or fully sufficient state, and meaning that one has gained all the necessary requirements to be free of karma and klesha, and at the same time one has also obtained or accomplished all the necessary abilities and means to support others. So therefore it's a state where one is completely self-sufficient, that is not dependent on any factor. No. So one could view one could have an idea or an imagination or a notion of what Buddha, the refuge of Buddha or Buddha could mean. So in that way, it's a state that now historically in our era, an individual who has reached that state will be then none other than Gautama Shakyamuni, the historical Buddha. Or to be more precise, then the prince who was known as Siddhartha. So it shows that it's a state that is reachable. And previous to him, previous to the historical Buddha Shakyamuni, and then Buddha Kashyapa and so on, other individuals have also reached the same state. And of course, if you trace back, then countless of individuals have reached that state. And then just within our own lineage, line of masters, and then such as the great Marpa and Milla and Gampopa and so on, each of them have also reached the same state. So they are the very proof that it's a state that is reachable. And particularly one thing that we have to remember and realize is that each of these great Buddhas, when they began their first step towards reaching the state, were as ordinary as any other sentient being. Each of these Buddhas were not born as Buddhas, and that they were earned, they were achieved. So therefore it's an important factor that we have to know and realize that we are in the same process. The connection to the second refuge, which is the experience, the knowledge of the enlightened ones or the Buddhas that we are associated with, is already sort of the beginning of our process. So, of course, it is really up to ourselves. Like I said, asking oneself whether we need refuge or not. Similarly, it is really up to ourselves whether we really want to reach the state of enlightenment. So then, if that is truly reaching enlightenment is truly our wish, then for now we meaning until we reach the state, then we have to rely. There is no other choice but to rely on the teachings and guides and paths. So now with that understanding, then the requirement of taking refuge in the Sangha then becomes again very important, such as various spiritual guides like those of our lineage masters. They are very much that of the Sangha. They represent Sangha. Like for example, the lineage masters, of our lineage, such as then the counters of wisdom aspects or yidams. Equally, also the counters of Dharmapalas that we know of. All of these are, in essence, same as Sangha. They represent Sangha. So, not necessarily when we think of Sangha that it has to be someone who's, let's say, who's wearing robes. Yes. But having said that, the robes, of course, does represent those who are wearing, that the robes does represent that someone is on the path towards following the paths of the spiritual or authentic Sanghas. So, but the absolute Sangha is, as it is described in the teachings, is the spiritual assembly, meaning someone already who has obtained, or someone who has already reached realizations, someone who is already on a path, or someone who is already on a bhumi, and not someone who has not reached that state. So meaning that's not necessarily that, how to say, when that's a Sangha is, the actual Sangha is only restricted to just wearing robes, but more than that. Yeah. Now, the reason why we need to take refuge in the Sangha, in the spiritual assembly, is because we need their guidance. And so, simply because, of course, although Buddha's blessing remains, but for our ordinary requirement, we need a physical representation. So that kind of let's say tangible support is then represented by means of our spiritual teachers who embodies all three, Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. So now I think we have some idea of why we need refuge and what is refuge. So then now the most important thing, the last thing that we have to know or realize is now the purpose. So the purpose or the intent is, and then particularly one could say in Mahayana, or particularly in the path of the Bodhisattvas, then it is the sentient beings, the rest. Meaning the purpose why we take refuge is the sentient beings, that it is for their sake. So that particular intent, the combination of seeking for enlightenment, seeking for state of enlightenment or Buddhahood, and then having a clear idea of why, or the reason, meaning the sentient beings. These two combinations then is what is known as generating of bodhicitta or generating of an enlightened mind. So, then with that, then I would like to ask all of you to meditate while you recite the refuge practice. So as a reference point, then like reference point or indicator, then we can think about a physical form of some kind that indicates, that represents Buddha, and similarly that represents Dharma and Sangha, meaning such as the very form of a Buddha, in terms of during the meditation. Yeah. So I hope I'm being clear here that the reason why I'm saying this is because taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha is not just taking refuge in a form of a Buddha, the image of a Buddha, but something more than that. My teachers used to say that if we do that, then it really depends on the material of the image, meaning then it could be a representation of the Buddha in painting, it could be out of stones, it could be out of other materials, so therefore very limited, the reference of taking refuge. Yeah.
2014年11月30日，多杰森巴灌顶之前，法王开示无常与皈依之真谛。要累积多少善业功德，才有此因缘领受圣者法教？我们有最好的上师，最庄严的道场，最殊胜的法缘，人生至此，夫复何求？无始以来，漂泊轮回，我们的生命宛如风中无根游丝，看不见归途。悲悯我等，慈父噶玛巴，请摄受。法王赐予洛本天津仁波切灌顶，如甘露自宝瓶溢注另一宝瓶，请瓶相授。法王亲自加持金刚带，赐予全体受法弟子大悲守护，恒常不离。明灯澄澈，光华四射，辉映着觉性之美。感恩法王，感恩上师仁波切，照破千年暗顿，点亮我们的生命。除了多杰森巴灌顶，法王还口传遥呼上师祈请文，四座上师相应法，四加行整部仪轨，金刚瑜伽母简轨，策励我们转心向道，实修精进。灌顶大法会连续约4-5个小时，法王不辞辛劳，不顾疲惫，圆满众生之愿。法王珍贵的身教，激励着我们行道不畏艰难，勇往直前。大家都渴望领受法王传法与加持，不远千里而来，圆满承办这样的大型法会，为众生服务，成就众人的求法善缘，正是菩萨学处。法王亲自下座，走向每位弟子，逐一赐予灌顶加持。洛本天津仁波切相傍前导，年佐仁波切及喇嘛随侍在后，相辅如来家业。外国弟子长途奔波，求法之诚令人动容。圆满之际，法王离席，合十为笑， 慈光照拂着每一位弟子。同时自然望向另一边，关注所有期待的脸庞，每一个细腻的小动作，无不流露深广的慈悲。仅此一回顾，挥挥手，传递的无量祝福，都让所有弟子欢喜感动不已。灌顶圆满时，天空出现美丽的云朵，法喜充满，噶玛巴切诺。